So, all right, everyone, welcome to Advanced Real Estate Objection Handling. My name is Brett Matsura. In today's video, we're going to go over, we need to think about it. This is a common objection that I think a lot of people get, and it's probably one of the most common objections that people get. And so we're going to cover that. I want to make sure that if you ever get this objection, and if you're talking to people, you're going to get this objection, then I want to make sure you know how to rebuttal that. The second one we're going to go over is we have a friend in the business. It's something that always comes up. Number 3, we've already chosen an agent to work with. And then number 4, we're not sure if we should sell our home. We did that last week, and and then this one is, what do you do different to sell homes? So these are going to be the objections for next week's role playing. So if you're in the role playing group and you have noticed the schedule, what I'm doing is I'm linking out each objection to the way that I recommend that you can handle the objection or rebuttal the objection. And it's timestamped. So that's in the schedule. So let's start back over to the number 1. We need to think about it. Okay, so let's break this objection down. We need to think about it. Let's imagine if you were speaking to your friend or your family member, would you just say, if you were talking to someone who you already had rapport with, somebody you already had a relationship with, would you, if they just came up, if you asked them a question, they're like, you need to think about it, would you just leave it at that? Most of us wouldn't, right? Not until you've actually had a more sincere conversation. Now, we need to think about it. Could come up while you're actually prospecting, cold outreach. It could come up through the nurturing lead follow-up section, the Q&A kind of objection handling period, what I call it, or it could come up at the kitchen table. Now, here's my belief system. Okay, it's not just about prospecting. It's not just about lead follow-up. It's not just about having the appointment. Each one of those sections play a very pivotal role in the sales cycle, in a sales process. And it doesn't matter if you're selling homes, doesn't matter if you're slinging homes, pushing cars. It's all the same process if you're in the business of selling something, if you're in the business of selling a service. Okay, it's all the same process. A consumer, when you're thinking about a consumer's journey, there's a point in time where they're ready to make a decision. Now think about this. When you're buying shoes, when you're buying a car, there's a point in time where you're ready to make a decision. But then there's also a point in time, it could be days, weeks, months, even years, of where you just first have the idea. You start thinking about it. Now that interim period is what I call the discovery period. And this is the period that you as the consumer have to get information before you actually are more comfortable making a decision. Okay, this happens in retail sales. When you walk into a store, a salesperson comes up, can I help you? Your automatic response is, no, I'm just looking. And you're going to go look around. You went into that store for a reason. Maybe you did just go in to look around. That's window shopping. But if you went in to buy a pair of jeans, you went in there for a specific purpose. And when the salesperson comes up to you and you say, no, I'm just looking, it's because you haven't gotten the information. You're not comfortable with the area. You don't know your surroundings yet. Okay. And when you start looking at them and touching and feeling and things, now you are ready. Now, this is where we need to think about it comes in, is that if you're at the kitchen table and you get the objection that we need to think about it, that means that in the consumer's mind, there is something left unanswered, or there's something that they're uncomfortable about. Okay. Those are going to be your fallback assumptions. When you get, we need to think about it, it means that A, you haven't answered all their questions, internal questions, or B, what you've said, there's something that you said that makes them feel uncomfortable. Because if you're following a process, when you're pre-qualifying your listing appointment, one of the questions that you ask them is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, do you plan on listing your home with me when I come out on Wednesday at 3:00? Now, you shouldn't be sitting at the kitchen table if they said no. right? Maybe you are. But the people who I find that will actually say no and then go to an appointment, they say no and then they go to the appointment, are people who don't have an abundance of appointments, right? So we need to think about it. This should not be coming up at the kitchen table. It should be coming up before then. But let's just assume, let's frame this up that you're sitting at the kitchen table. You just gave your listing presentation, and now you ask them for the business, and their response is, Brett, I really like what you said, but we really need to think about it. Now, here's what I know to be true. Remember, the consumer's journey, where they're ready to make a decision, days, week, months, years, starting to think about it. They've thought about everything in between that. How do we know this? Because you and I do the same thing. It's the consumer's journey, not the home seller's journey, the consumer's journey. And they've already thought through things. So here's what we do. You know what, Brett? Thank you for sharing that information. We really need to think about it. Okay, now we're going to follow the same structure that we always do. Okay, we're going to acknowledge, approve, input a softener, ask a question. Okay, now we know that our fallback is they're uncomfortable about something you said, or they still have questions. Okay, that's what we're going to roll with. Those are the fallback. Unless they gave you other intel, that's going to be your fallback assumption. Okay, you're not just going to say, hey, thanks for spending 30 minutes with me or an hour with me. Call me if you want to list your home. Okay, that's not sales. Okay, so Brett, we really like what you said. We need to think about it. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I totally get it. This is a really big decision, right? We're acknowledging, I understand that you need to think about it. This is a really big decision. Okay, we're acknowledging what they're saying. In fact, most homeowners want to make sure that they put a lot of time, effort, and thought into making the right decision. Now, if you don't mind me asking, okay, now this is acknowledged, I approved, I grouped them into the most homeowners. Now I throw in a softener, if you don't mind me asking. Now I'm going to deflect. Most homeowners, when they say that they need to think about something, it means that either there are some lingering questions that they have that are unanswered, or they're uncomfortable about something that I had said. Now, if you don't mind me asking, what is it that you need to think about? What questions, or if you don't mind me asking, what questions are left unanswered for you? Okay, now you're really high toning in it. What is it about something that I said during my presentation that made you uncomfortable that you need to think about it? Okay, now what you're doing is you're labeling the situation. Okay, none of that may be true. And if it's true, they're going to answer your question. But if they're not true, think about this. When somebody paraphrased something to you that's not accurate, you correct them, right? So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, let's back this up. So we need to think about it. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I totally get that you need to think about it. It's a really big decision. And what I find is that most homeowners want to make sure that they're making the right decision on the professional that they choose. Now, what I find is that in most cases with homeowners, there's two things that come up when they need to think about it. Either A, I've left some questions that they have unanswered, or B, there's something that I said in the presentation that made you feel uncomfortable that you need to kind of process it more and think about it. So if you don't mind me asking, what questions have I left unanswered for you? Well, you know what, Brett, I don't think I have any questions. I mean, you're very thorough in selling your home. We know exactly what you do to get home sold. We know everything. Okay, terrific. So do you feel at this time that I have the qualifications and the experience to get your home sold in the time that you want for the money that you want? Well, yeah. I think that you have those qualifications. We really need to think about it. Yeah, I totally get that you need to think about it. And again, if you don't mind me asking, what was it during my presentation that I shared with you that you felt uncomfortable about that makes it so you don't want to, or you can't make the decision today? Here's where a lot of people go wrong here, guys. They start talking when it's the other person's to talk. You ask a very direct, open-ended question that's going to give you massive intel, and they just start talking. They start dancing around and start dancing around the subject, right? It's an honest question. If you walk through the process, if you pre-qualify the appointment and you ask the question, if what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, are you planning to list your home with me at 3:00 on Thursday? And they say yes. And then you get to the presentation and you do an awesome presentation. They just accepted the fact that you are the most qualified and experienced person to do it. And they now need to think about it. Something changed, right? Something's uncomfortable. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the commission. That's why I said in all the trainings that I do, there are some very common questions, very common objections that you're going to get. And if you don't make sure, it's like in the martial arts, it's like a right hook, right? It's the most common punch on planet Earth because 90% of the planet's right-handed. So there are common questions that you need to have, and yet the common questions are the ones that are always the most difficult to rebuttal because everybody's trying to come up with something magical. And there's nothing magical about it, right? So we need to think about it. Let's kind of break that down again. So we need to think about it, acknowledge it. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I totally get you need to think about it. It's a big decision. Approve. Most homeowners, they want to take some time, look at all the different angles and make sure that they're choosing the right agent for the job of selling the home. Okay. Softener. Now, if you don't mind me asking, there are 2 reasons why most homeowners need to think about it. Number 1 is there are some unanswered questions. Number 2 is that there's something that I said that made you feel uncomfortable about my process. Now, what are the concerns or what are the questions that you still have that I might be able to answer for you here today? No, we don't have any questions. Terrific. So what is it, if you don't mind me asking, what is it that I said during the presentation that makes you feel uncomfortable that you need to give it more processing time on so you can feel comfortable hiring me for the job of selling your home? Well, you know, I'm looking at the commission, Jim Jones down the street. See, that's what I meant. You would never have known this. Most people will just say, we need to think about it. Okay, go ahead and think about it. And what I'll do is I'll follow up with you next week. And then you follow up with them next week and you find out that they just listed with a discount broker, right? Now that discount broker might not be the best fit for them. It might be, right? Like I always say, you will lose out on cost. I lost out on costs last week on an agent. It is what it is. Know your value. Know your value. Hold true to your value. Have a life in abundance. Get a lot of leads. If you're ever at a point where you need to have that deal, we need to get you more leads. Okay, so that's it. We need to think about it. We have a friend in the business. We have a friend in the business. Okay, that's the next objection. Okay, so we're going to follow the common framework here. Okay, so we have a friend in the business. Acknowledge. Oh, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? I totally get that you have a friend in the business. We acknowledged it. Make them right. In fact, what I find is that most people in California have a friend in the business. If you've been on planet Earth for a long time, then odds are you're going to come across someone who either does mortgages or in real estate. It's just what it is. Every one of my friends are in real estate. And yet nobody ever calls me. It's interesting. Okay, so we have a friend in the business. Acknowledge. Mr. and Ms. Seller, totally get that you have a friend in the business. Most homeowners, I find, have a friend in the business. Most homeowners who live in California have friends in the business. Most people who have, who are in our age group have friends in the business. Doesn't really matter what, just make them right. Just say most homeowners have friends in the business. You don't really need to do it because most have friends in the business. Softener, but if you don't mind me asking, okay, they might mind you asking, but the fact that you actually did a softener means that they're actually going to be receptive to what you say next. If there was a financial advantage, if I could show you that with my experience and my market knowledge that I could sell your home for more money in a faster amount of time, would you consider hiring somebody outside of your circle of friends? It's an honest answer. It's an honest. Most people that I find, most newer salespeople on the phone, is that when they get a friend in the business, that's their out, right? That's their easy out. Okay, well, here's the other thing that people do. We have a friend in the business. Okay, how long are they? Then they start asking questions like they're offended and being intrusive. Look, man, we are all trying to build our past client and sphere of influence database and build relationships with people. The whole reason, if they have a friend in the business and they're not going to work with you because they have a friend in the business, that person's doing what we train people to do, right? You want to have a database, you want to have a sphere of influence, you want to have past clients that if another real estate agent tries to get their business, that they're so loyal to you, that they have that strong relationship with you, that they won't work with you. That's the goal here. Now, I'm going to turn off this light. It's baking me. Now, most people's past client and sphere of influence program does not stay in front of them. I think everybody I typically talk to always say that they can work their database better. So do it. But we have a friend in the business, acknowledge what they say, make them right, put a softener, ask them a question. Okay. Now, if we go back to the bare bones of this whole format, hey, Mr. and Ms. Seller, I totally get that you have a friend in the business. In fact, if you live in California, I'd be surprised if you didn't have a friend in the business. Now, if you don't mind me asking, what is it that about working with a friend in the business is important to you about selling your home, right? That's the go-to, right? That's the fallback. When in doubt, just say, what is important to you about working with your friend in the business, right? We did a whole training on this about 3 weeks ago on just using that one rebuttal as through all the objections. Okay, so that's how we do it. We have a friend in the business, acknowledge it, accept the fact, softener, ask a question. Here's the other one. So the next objection is, we've already chosen an agent to work with. We've already chosen an agent to work with. Now, chances are when you're going to get this is going to be on the telephone. I hope that this isn't, you're not sitting at the kitchen table and someone invited you over just to tell you that they've already chosen an agent to work with, right? Most of the time that doesn't happen. So this is mostly going to come up on a cold outreach or a warm outreach, maybe a follow-up, okay? So again, first thing we're going to do is we're going to acknowledge it. I totally get that you've chosen another agent to work with. While I have you on the phone, let me ask you this one question, okay? I acknowledged, I skipped over, this is more of a direct question. This could be a blow-off, right? But I acknowledged what they said. I did not approve of what they said. I didn't loop them into I didn't want to say most homeowners have already chosen an agent to work with. I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to acknowledge what they say. So I totally get it. While I have you on the phone, that's a softener. Let me ask you this one question, okay? The question you don't ask is, have you already signed the listing agreement? That's very intrusive. You don't have the permission. You don't have the conversation. You're not there yet, right? You just went from point A to Z in a microsecond, and it's none of your business yet. Excuse me. So I get it that, okay, I totally get that you've already chosen an agent to work with. Now, while I have you on the phone, if you don't mind me asking, I want to ask you just one question. Now, my company and I have sold a lot of homes in your area. In fact, I'm very familiar, not with just your neighborhood, but with your home specifically. So if I had a way that I could sell your home and net you more money in a faster amount of time, would that change anything for you? Now, let's pause right there. They've already said that they've already chosen an agent to work with. Now, I don't know that to be true or not. Okay, I know that they may have just chosen in their mind, but yet have yet to sign the listing agreement yet, right? That's where I'm kind of getting to. But this question is geared at them processing it in their head, right? I'm asking them if, look, I'm awesome. Me and my company have sold a lot of homes in this area. I have a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience, not just about your neighborhood, but also about your home. So if I had a way that you felt confident that I could sell your home faster and for more money, would that change anything for you? And then let them talk. No. We've already committed. We've already signed the listing agreement. Okay, all bets are off right now. Once you find out that they've signed it, move on. Okay, it's called tortious interference. Don't mess with somebody else's listing agreement. But there's a chance that they're going to lean in and they're going to ask you more questions. Well, how are you going to do that? That's a really great question. If you don't mind me asking first, have you already signed a listing agreement with the agent that you've chosen? No, we have it scheduled to do something tomorrow at noon. Oh, so tomorrow at noon. So would it be possible for me to meet with you sometime this week to drop by and share with you what it is that I do to get homes sold, how I can actually get you more money in less time? Would you be open to something like that? Yeah, I'd be open for it, but it'd have to be before we meet with them at noon. How does 10 o'clock work for you? How does tonight at 7 o'clock work for you? How does whatever work for you, right? But the key here is that you labeled, you gave them a little bit more. So first of all, let's break this down. So number one, we acknowledged. Number two, we did a softener. While I have you on the phone, let me ask you one question. Now that one question is going to have an opening to it. Look, my company and I have sold a lot of homes in this area. In fact, I'm very familiar with not just your neighborhood, but your home. So let me ask you this. If I had a way, right? So you pre-framed your question. You had to give them a little bit of zing, a little bit of zest before you get into that question. If I could show you and you felt comfortable and confident that I could sell your home for more money and in a faster amount of time, would that change anything for you on the decision that you make on the agent that you choose? Well, we've already interviewed 5 agents. Oh, you've already interviewed 5 agents. Did any of the agents have 23 years of experience and sold over 1,000 homes across 26 states? Now that's me. You would have to come up with your own rebuttal. Has any of those agents sold, or their company sold, thousands of homes in your immediate area and has a proven track record of selling for the highest dollar amount in the quickest amount of time? No one brought that up. Okay. So you come up with what it is that you're going to say, and this is where the practice comes in, right? I can share with you the framework and I can kind of share with you examples of different strategies, but you don't want to use the things that I use, because what I would use are going to strengthen my position. I had a question last week with one of our agents, and they lost a listing to a top agent in the market. And he asked me, what could he have done different in order to compete with that agent? And I said 2 things. I said, number one is you have to compete by not competing. You have to compete by not competing. You're not in competition with them, right? And number 2, you have to pitch your strengths. Look, guys, we're all real estate agents. We all have a lockbox. We all have a license to do real estate. We can all show homes. We can all knock on doors. We can all prospect. There are some things that we all can do, right? And the consumer looks at that and they say, well, this person's doing the same thing as this person, right? If you're going to set yourself apart and you're going to demand that higher commission, you have to become a specialist and you have to separate yourself with your own unique branding. Back onto subject. So we've already worked with a agent to work with. Again, just follow the strategy. That will help you out. Make sure that you come up with things and map these things out in your head. Okay, we have time for one more. I'm going to go to this one. What do you do different to sell homes? What do you do different to sell homes? Okay, let's frame this up. When are you getting this objection? I hope you're not getting this objection at the kitchen table. This objection should come up and you're going to get this objection. Okay. You need to make sure there are some common objections that you're going to get. You're going to get objections with probably, I have a friend in the business. You're going to get compensation objections or questions, and you're going to get what is it that you're going to do to sell homes. Okay. Those are going to come up. You have to make sure that in your listing process, from the very beginning to that first phone call to the actual kitchen table, you need to make sure that there are certain key questions that come up all the time that get answered. Nobody is going to list their home with you if they don't know how much you charge and they don't know what you do to get homes sold. And don't think for a second that you're awesome, that you're just going to wing it at the listing presentation, right? It's a whole process. Some of you might, I mean, if you really think about it, like high 70% of homeowners list with only one person. So, but if you want to do a massive amount of listings and you want to take a lot of listings, you've got to have a process. You've got to make sure that that process answers and rebuttals all the common questions and objections so that you don't have to field those. But Brett, they might cancel the listing presentation. Yes, and that's saving you time, which is why you need to make sure that you have more leads so that you can go on more listing presentations so that one thing doesn't encompass your whole life, right? So what do you do to get homes sold? We're going to assume that this is on a prospecting call or a follow-up call. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that's a really great question. You know, most homeowners want to know what it is that I do differently that gets homeowners more money in less time than other real estate agents. What I'd like to do is see if I could meet with you for 20 or 30 minutes sometime this week to share with you my exact process of how I get homes sold. Would you be open to meeting sometime this week? Okay, I answered the question, but I went for the appointment. And it wasn't as my style that I work with you guys on is conversation selling. It's not hardcore selling. Okay, hardcore selling would be, hey, that's a really great question. When can we meet? When can we meet? 3:30 on Wednesday or 5 o'clock on Thursday, and I can share that with you. Okay, that's hard. Okay, we want to be more conversational. Right? So what do you do to get this home sold? You know what? That's a really great question. In fact, most homeowners want to know what it is that I do differently that nets my clients more money and sells a home in the quickest amount of time. So what I'd like to do, if you're open to it, is there sometime this week that we can meet at your home and I can sit down with you and your wife for 20 or 30 minutes and share with you my exact step-by-step process of how I can get your home sold and get you the money you want? Would you be open to doing something like that this week? You know, I don't know. I mean, you know, this week's bad. Okay, I totally get it. What about next week? Do you have 20 or 30 minutes sometime next week? Yeah, we could probably do it sometime next week. Is there a day of the week that's better for you? You know, Tuesdays and Thursdays typically work best for me. Okay, so on Tuesday, I could do in the morning at 11 a.m. or I could do later in the afternoon, say 3 or 3:30. Do either of those times work for you? You know, 3:30 in the afternoon will work for me. Terrific. Now, before I come out, I'm going to be sending you out a package of information, you know, and then you kind of go through your pre-meeting drill. So that concludes today's objection handling training. Thanks for showing up. For those of you live, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next week.